change the name? Yeah, here she goes. Take a fit.
Okay, the candidates this evening for the office of State Attorney General of Calvert County.
No. State's attorney.
State's Attorney. You guys are so quality, I was going to promote you.
I don't want to be Attorney General.
State's Attorney of Calvert County are Bob Harvey and Rick Perrick. Again, the online application called random.org was used to select the order in which the candidates respond to questions posed. The candidates' numbers were determined by their order on the ballot. For example, 2 candidates are running for that office. Bob Harvey is the first name on the ballot, and therefore he is candidate number 1. Rick Perrick is the second name on the ballot, and therefore he is candidate number 2. Because there are only 2 candidates, each candidate will answer all of the questions posed. So, the first question is, do you believe that Calvert County Law Enforcement and Justice Administration is currently free of discrimination? If not, what is the most important area that needs to be fixed?
Mr. Harvey.
Well, to argue that there's no discrimination in law enforcement would be to ignore the realities of what's going on in our country. Of course there's discrimination. There's discrimination in everything that goes on. And I'm not prepared to ignore that at all. Those problems exist in every institution in our country, and they have to be identified and rooted out. We are working to do that. I am part of a Maryland Criminal Sentencing Commission. We're charged with the task now of determining whether or not there is racial bias in criminal sentencing in this state. And we're going to look at the statistics to determine whether there is, and if there is, we're going to make changes.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you believe that the Calvert County Law Enforcement and Justice Administration is currently free of discrimination? If not, what are some of the most important areas to be fixed?
Thank you. As Mr. Harvey stated, there's always some discrimination throughout the system, right? So this question here, we're talking about both law enforcement as well as Justice Administration, which would include the state's attorney's office, which would include the law enforcement partners, the courts. So throughout that whole system, is there some discrimination throughout that system? Sure there is, right? We certainly see, if you go sit in court, you're going to see that the law is not applied equally throughout. The people that are being charged, the sorts of charges that are being had aren't the same, right? And so how do we fix that is I think it starts with transparency. I think it starts with you putting crime data online where it's easily available for everyone. That way we can start holding our courts accountable, we can start holding our law enforcement accountable, and we can hold our courts accountable. So I think that's where it starts. Then we also move on to training, bias training, inherent bias training, those sorts of things, where we work both with our law enforcement partners as well as the state's attorney's office.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick. What is a veterans treatment court? How would it work? And have they been proven to positively impact the community and other places where they currently exist?
Thank you. Veterans as an Army veteran, Veterans Treatment Court is something that is very important to me. That's why I went and I met with the Calvert County veterans community about establishing the Veterans Treatment Court. That is why I've met with George Owings about doing this. This is a program that is funded by the Veterans Affairs Department of the federal government. It's a grant-funded program. There's about 600 of these throughout the county, and they've shown themselves to be very efficacious in lowering folks from reoffending. Right. So what happens is when you're in the military, folks will suffer from traumatic brain injuries. They'll suffer from PTSD, and they come from this structured environment into the outside world. Some of them have a hard time accommodating to the outside world. So Veterans Treatment Court provides them the services and the structure so that they can be successful and not reoffend. I'm very pro it, and once we get into office, it's something that's going to be #1 priority of mine, is getting that up and going for Calvert County's veterans.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
Well, I've been working on this issue now for probably 6 months. My opponent jumped on the bandwagon late in the game. What he didn't talk to were our judges. I went and talked to Judge Saunders in the district court and Judge Chanley in the circuit court, and I said, we'd like to try and do a veterans treatment court. And the first thing he said is, we don't have the numbers. We do not have the numbers in Calvert County to support a separate treatment court. He didn't bother to ask our judges. You're not going to have a treatment court unless our judges say you were going to have a treatment court. So what we've done is I've gone to Chief Judge Morrissey of the district court and said, Judge, let's identify when people come into the system whether or not they're veterans. He's agreed to do that across the state so we can identify who the veterans are, and once we identify the veterans, we can offer them services through what's called our mental health docket in the district court and our drug court in the circuit court. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get it done.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perrick, if the state's attorney's office absolutely had to cut expenses, what would you cut first?
So first, before I get to that, I just want to address the issue with Veterans Treatment Court. We know how many veterans are in Calvert County, right? There are about 7,000 veterans per the last census that we had. So we know the size of the population, and we can infer from that the percentage of those that we expect that would be committing or involved in crimes of some sort. Furthermore, the VA has similar numbers, although I would be all for the courts collecting some of that information. As far as cutting expenses, I think the easiest place for you to cut expenses now is by adopting the use of technology, right, and cutting down on paper usage. You can cut on postage, you can cut on copying costs. You can certainly do these sorts of things using technology to lower the state's attorney's budget.
What my opponent doesn't realize is that the state's attorney's budget doesn't include technology. The state's attorney's budget does not include any technology. Technology is run by the county. Our technology services are provided and funded for by the county. That's because it's cost-saving and effective for the county to run it for all the county agencies. We all have the same technology services. So I don't know what he's talking about, but he's not going to be able to do it because the county funds technology. We are getting new technology. We're getting a new case management system. It's called Odyssey. It's going to help us manage our technology, our data statistics, our case management, but it's funded by and provided for by it's not even part of the state's attorney budget, period.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
In the aftermath of the Leah Clark case, what would you do differently?
Well, let me state first and foremost, because my opponent has been spreading disinformation. I had nothing to do with that case. That case happened when Mr. Rappaport was the state's attorney. The case was investigated under Mr. Rappaport's tenure. After Mr. Rappaport became a judge, the state's attorney's office was taken over by Jennifer Morton. Jennifer Morton agreed that the case should be shipped out to an outside prosecutor, and that's what happened. I had nothing to do with it. What I did do, however, in the aftermath of that case, my staff and myself developed a PowerPoint presentation. We went to each roll call Calvert County Sheriff's Office, and we said, this is how you do it right. This is the way you do it in the future. You get a search warrant. If you want to draw blood in a case involving a fatality, you get a search warrant and you draw the blood and you do it the right way. They know how to do it now, and we've had another case, a similar situation, was prosecuted by my office and ended up working out just fine.
Mr. Perrick?
Can you repeat the question, please?
In the aftermath of the Leah Clark case, what would you do differently?
Thank you. So the Leah Clark case was the young lady that was unfortunately tragically killed over here in Darris Beach Road by an off-duty Calvert County Sheriff's deputy. I take a little offense to the fact that Mr. Harvey says he had nothing to do with this case when he, in fact, was this police officer's defense attorney just prior to him being appointed as state's attorney. The case ended up in a $600 fine for this officer. during Mr. Harvey's term, and no steps. I mean, to say that what you're going to do about this issue is present a PowerPoint to one time to, police officers. This needs to be an ongoing thing. What I would call for is I would call for the commissioners to hire an outside agency to conduct a thorough investigation from the moment the accident happened to the moment the jury verdict came in, and figure out where along the line both of these, because this is one of the sheriff's office issue. This is a sheriff's office issue. This is a state's attorney's issue. State police was involved, right? So we got to get all of these agencies to figure out how we can do better in the future. We owe the people better than that.
Thank you. I would like to remind both candidates that this forum is intended to give the audience and give the average voter insights into your position. We really encourage you not to attack each other, because that is not in the spirit of this particular forum. Mr. Perrick, what are your highest priorities for improvements in juvenile justice?
So in juvenile justice, I mean, first and foremost, we just had a change in the juvenile law, right? The law that juvenile justice is about getting these juveniles and getting them back so that they're good citizens of our county. So the first priority really is training, both with the sheriff's office, but also with our prosecutors, to make sure that everyone understands the new laws. We need to provide work better with our partners, such as the school board, right? So when we talk to the folks at the school board, they feel like the state's attorney used to, under Laura Martin, used to spend more time, have more contact with them, and that's kind of dropped off a little bit. We need to make sure that we stay on the same page to address issues that we're seeing now with things like cyberbullying and that sort of thing. So we need to make sure that we're working with our school partners or law enforcement partners to make sure that all those issues are being properly addressed.
Well, the juvenile justice system is broken in the state of Maryland. It's broken because the state of Maryland has not funded our Department of Juvenile Services. They have not provided the counselors that are needed. They have not provided the treatment centers, the treatment facilities that are needed. It's not a Calvert County problem, it's a state problem. And it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. I have been out at each of our schools, high schools in Calvert County, to talk to our kids about juvenile justice, to let them know what the system is all about, to try and educate them as to what the criminal justice system is about. So that's being done, and we're going to do more of that this semester, this time around, with Ms. Dawn Lister, who runs the criminal justice program in Calvert County.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
how would you promote accessibility to you for the public?
Well, I was thinking on the way here that I've done a pretty good job of community outreach. We go out to the homeowners associations, we attend the neighborhood watch meetings, we are in the schools. I'm in a lot of these organizations. I go out all the time, but I haven't done a very good job of bringing people in. So I'm here tonight to propose that we have a Calvert County Crime Summit, that we bring people into the Calvert County State's Attorney's Office, community organizations, faith leaders, NAACP, and we listen to what you have to say that we need to fix, that we need to do better. So it's not just about outreach. We do outreach. We need to have input. So I intend to do that. As soon as all this election craziness is over with, we can start doing things like that.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick.
Thank you. So when I came to Calvert County, I was a law clerk in St. Mary's County, and Laura Martin recruited me over to the state's attorney's office. And Laura Martin is a mentor of mine, right? And so Laura, taught us that every phone call that came into her office, every letter that she got, every email that she got, all of those got responded to. When one of you citizens, or one of us citizens, calls into the state's attorney's office and wants to have an issue with the state's attorney, the state's attorney should take that meeting and discuss those issues, right? Furthermore, we should have involvement. We have great neighborhood organizations. We have great organizations like the NAACP concerned black women, concerned black men. We must remain involved with those folks. We must use the tools that we have, social media, to reach out to folks. We got to have town halls, and more importantly, when we do have cases of note, such as the Leah Clark case or the other police officer where there's a lot of interest, we got to communicate to folks as to how the state's attorney's office is resolving them.
Thank you.
Mr. Perrick, what do you think are the most difficult parts of the state attorney's job?
Most difficult part of the state's attorney's job, I think, is having an ongoing, honest communication with the citizenry. What does that mean? That means that we don't use the grand jury to hide behind, right, when we got to take unpopular positions, right? So that means that if we choose not to go forward on a case, we need to just go out and communicate to the community that we're going to go forward or not go forward on a case. When something goes terribly wrong in court, like we saw with the Leah Clark case, we need to communicate with the public what went wrong and what we're going to do better in the future. And it's hard. It's hard to stand up to that criticism. It's hard to face down to the folks that would have you do something different. But the law is the law, and the public needs to understand why it is that we're taking actions that we are, because otherwise it erodes the trust that the public has in us. It erodes the trust that the public has in the police officers that are out there. And the more trust that they have for us, the more trust they're going to have for law enforcement, and the easier we're going to make the lives of our police officers on the road.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey.
You know, for those of you who don't know me, I actually am the incumbent state's attorney. So I can tell you there are no easy parts to this job. It's a 24/7 job. You're never off duty. It's not unusual to get a phone call in the middle of the night about some crisis where the police need some advice or guidance. There are difficult decisions that are made every day. You have to decide on people's lives. Should somebody go to jail? Should somebody be prosecuted? It's a very, very difficult job. I've done it for the last almost 3 years now. I've done it before when I was in Prince George's County as the deputy state's attorney. There is no easy part. It's all difficult. There's no easy part. It's all difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
how is your campaign funded?
My campaign is funded by campaign contributions from people that support me, people that I know. I'd like to consider most of them to be my friends. I do have a large number of supporters that are lawyers, and I'm not ashamed to say that. The lawyers in Calvert County support me because I think they believe that I'm the best candidate. My opponent has received campaign contributions from lawyers as well. I don't support public funding, that previous question that came up. I think we have an obligation to obtain our own funds for our campaign, and we all have an obligation to report where we get them from. There's no secrets there. My opponent reports his campaign contributions, and I do likewise.
Thank you. Mr. Perrick?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. How is your campaign funded?
So my campaign is a grassroots campaign, right? So these are my neighbors, you know, or the people here, some people here in this room I see that have donated my campaign. They're police officers, they're teachers, they're nurses. Those are my campaign. Now, yes, when Mr. Harvey says a large number of his supporters are lawyers, he's talking about 87% or so of his supporters that people have donated money to him are criminal defense attorneys or their families, right? On top of this, there's a comment made that, it's because the local attorneys are supporting him. Well, go check those reportings are easily available. We can all go online tonight and go take a look, and you'll see that these are largely out-of-county attorneys, right? These are Prince George's attorneys and Rundle attorneys. There are a couple, one or two in this very courtroom right now. So my campaign is a campaign of the people, and that's how we're going to keep it. Sure, do I have a couple friends that are attorneys that gave us a couple dollars? Yes, but the vast majority are our neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perrick, what are your highest priorities for improvements in juvenile justice?
Did we already? I think you already asked that.
I agree. That's been asked.
Yeah.
Asked and answered.
See, we agree on stuff sometimes.
Okay, I'll ask the next question. Mr. Perrick, what attributes do you bring to this office that the voter needs to know before making a choice in the voting booth?
Thank you. So I'm an Army veteran. I'm very proud of my service. With that, I went through a lot of training for led folks. I have a law practice, Perrick Law, here in Calvert County. It's a small firm, but we do have a staff. We have attorneys that have worked for us, and we've been very, very successful. I think it's important for folks to know that my dad was a big philanthropist. There's a clinic in Malawi named after him, the Perrick Clinic, because he helped get that off the ground to help orphans, and that are the values that he gave to me, right? So ever since I was in high school, that's when I joined the Army. I've always been involved. I remain involved in our community. I am a commissioner here with the Calvert County Housing Authority because I think it's important that we house Calvert County's very large unhoused population. And so those things are important to me. I have kids in our Calvert County schools, and I think it's very important that we make them a safe place for all our children.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Experience, experience, experience. I have over 40 years of experience as a criminal trial lawyer. I'm not talking about sitting behind a desk and writing wills and probate. I'm talking about being in the courtroom every day, either prosecuting or defending cases. I started out my career in Prince George's County, fighting the cocaine wars up there, prosecuted any number of serious cases, including over a dozen murder cases. I never lost one. After that, I came down here as a defense attorney. I represented the citizens of Calvert County who were charged with crimes, defending their rights, making sure that they got what was due to them in terms of rights in the criminal justice system. And now I am the state's attorney, prosecuting cases. I still do it. I still go to court. I still handle cases. And I've successfully and efficiently managed the largest law firm in Calvert County, which is the state's attorney's office, $2.6 million budget.
Okay, thank you. For both candidates, without repeating yourself again from the last question, anything that you didn't cover, that you would like to cover, that you would like the audience to know about before they reach the voting booth? And we'll start with Mr. Harvey first.
Well, that's really an open-ended. There's so much to know. I'm sure my opponent has a lot he'd like to say too. I'm from the state of Maryland. I was actually born in D.C., lived there for 6 months, and grew up in Montgomery County. My family was always very active. My mother was very active in the League of Women Voters in Calvert County. We were taught the difference between right and wrong. I went to college at the University of Maryland. You talk about social activism, social justice. People forget I grew up in the 60s and 70s in a time of social upheaval. I was at the University of Maryland during the Vietnam War protests. I know what it feels like to get tear gassed, by the way. I was on the Mall for the Poor People's March in 1968. But when it comes to crime and injustice, that's a different story, and my job is to protect the people.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Perrick?
Thank you. So I think it's important for folks to know that I was a prosecutor here in Calvert County. Some of the questions tonight had to do with juvenile justice. I did all the juvenile justice prosecution in Calvert County for a number of years before moving up to Prince George's County, where I worked in their major crimes division. There I handled every sort of case from very serious assaults, first-degree assaults, all the way up to attempted murders. I also am a trial attorney. Was in court today in Calvert County and handled a number of matters. I've appeared before all our courts here regularly, to include the district court, the circuit court, and the juvenile court. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration, which I think is going to serve me well in the management part of this job, increasing the morale of the state's attorney staff and our law enforcement partners. I know what it feels like to be tear gas because the Army sent me into a box full of tear gas, And I'm lucky that there aren't any more pictures of that hanging around.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and your responses.
You get a closing statement? Or closing statement?
Well, we thought that it would have
That was your
duplicated,
closing statement.
we thought it would have duplicated what you've already said.
Okay.
You mean I wrote all this stuff down and I don't even? All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Can I take my notes?
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I gotcha. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.